We do so much reading that one of the things that is a practical skill is anything we can do to read faster with decent comprehension is going to help us in our work. So I thought I would share a few pointers. I was a terribly slow reader until I got similar pointers in my early 20s, and it really has helped with many things. So you may well be familiar with what I'm going to share, but maybe you're not. So for the benefit of those who might not be aware of some of these principles. So there are some practical things that you can do based on what we are taught in school to read faster and still have decent comprehension. So I'm going to run through 4 of those quickly. The first one relates to peripheral vision. So if I were to draw a circle over here and you were to focus intensely on that circle, so focus your eyes and concentration only on the circle. And I asked, don't focus on the side. If I draw an X on the left-hand side while you're focusing on the circle, can you see the X? Or on the other side, can you see the Y? Of course you can, right? You can see them out of peripheral vision. So your eye picks them up. Even though you're focused over here, your eye's still picking up vaguely what's going on there and there. Typically what we do when we read is we start over here and we drag our eye all the way across the page until we get to here, and then we come back and we read the next line all the way across to there, and so on and so forth. So we keep repeating that process. You read from the extreme left of the line all the way to the extreme right of the line. So that's basically what we are taught to do when we learn to read. It fails to recognize the power of peripheral vision. You don't need to, the way your eye works, you don't need to put your eye here and drag it all the way to the end of the line and then move it back to the beginning of the next line and drag it all the way across. If you start reading from here and you drag your eye across to there, you will pick up the words in the margin. So if I start reading line 3 from here and I focus on message, my eye and my brain will pick up sent with a in the margin, and I carry on going to deliver it. And even if I don't go all the way to the end, if I get to here before moving there, my eye will pick up frequently. So what you can do is you can take 2 imaginary lines and draw them in a word or 2 from the end of each line. And so when you're reading, you don't read all the way to the end of every line. You read to about there, and you get to the end and you come back to the next line. So that's capitalizing on the way that our eye picks up peripheral vision. Another element of this is what we can call eye tracking. And the basic idea here is that when you read across a line of text, your eye does not go, so it does not go in a straight line. What it does is it jumps. Pardon for the handwriting. So your eye doesn't track across a line of text in a nice straight line like this and then go to the next one and track in a straight line. What it does is it jumps. It goes from here to there, etc. And then you go down to the next line. And that has implications when we are reading. For example, if I'm reading here, I might think that my eye automatically tracks the entire line. It doesn't. What it does is it starts here and then it jumps back, and particularly when you get to the end of a line and you come back, sometimes your eye doesn't pick up the next line. It jumps a line, sometimes it jumps back, and you find yourself rereading the same line. So how do we prevent the biology of our eye slowing us down by rereading the same line, etc.? The technique is dirt simple. You need something that your eye follows. If you're reading on a physical page, a finger does the job quite well. If you're reading on a screen or an iPad or something that forces your eye to follow this line and then come back to the next one and follow it across the page again. So some kind of an eye pointer. If you ever see somebody reading with a finger on the page or reading with a pointer, it's to prevent our eyes jumping around and losing our place and having to re-find it, all of which slows us down. And if we put our 2 techniques together, what I would do is I would start here and I would track my eye across the page until I get to about there, and then I would move my pointer or my finger to the beginning and do that again and do that again and so on. So what am I doing? I'm preventing my eye losing its place, which is what it does automatically, and I'm capitalizing on peripheral vision by not needing to go all the way to the end. The picture shows a guy swinging 2 baseball bats, which could be deemed to be cheating. Maybe a technique our Proteas batsmen should try when they're batting. We seem to have very thin bats. We keep getting the edges. The idea here is that a baseball player who's about to go and hit will pick up 2, 3, sometimes even more bats and swing them, and then he'll put the extra ones down and he'll go and obviously bat with a single bat. What's he doing? He's training muscle memory. The idea is that if your muscles get used to certain movements at extra pressure, then it's easier when he goes back to holding a single bat. And that same idea applies to reading. There are times that it's helpful to read about twice as fast as we fully comprehend what's going on for a period of time. And then if you slow down, you'll find that you slow down not to 1, but maybe to a little bit faster than you were reading before. So it's sometimes helpful to skim a bit faster than you're picking things up in their entirety. And if you do that fairly regularly, your reading speed will improve. So if my comprehension speed is tracking my eye across the page something like this, then there are times that it's helpful to do it a little bit faster, that I'm able to pick up everything, because when I'm finished doing that and I slow down, I'll probably be able to go a bit faster than I was before. And then there's 2 practical helpful tips that can help us a great deal, particularly when reading longer works and books and stuff like that. And it relates to purposeful pacing. So there are 2 key questions here. The first one, that's definitely not where you start when you've got 2 points. Right, so the first one relates to how much do I already know about the subject? And the idea is that you draw on a thing that people call schema. The more you know about a subject, the faster you can assimilate new information about the same subject. So the idea is that if you already know much, you can skim through new information faster. So you can skim, your brain only needs to pick up keywords and it triggers whole schemas, whole ideas that make sense. Conversely, if you know little about a subject, so the subject matter is foreign or new to you, then you need to go much slower. So if you know a great deal about Islam and you're reading your 100th book about Islam, you should be able to skim fairly fast because there's a lot of schema built into that. But if you know a lot about Islam and you're reading a book about Buddhism, and Buddhism's foreign territory, you're going to need to pace yourself slower because there isn't the schema to draw on. And so that applies to that skimming, speeding up, slowing down. And the last thing is, how much do we need to know? So already know, and the last point is, how much do I need to know out of this? Often we don't need to know the details. If we just need to know the big idea, then we can skim fast. So I'm just looking for big ideas. I'm not needing to pick up all the details. I can skim through text really quickly because you'll pick up enough of it probably to get the big points. Conversely, if you need to know the details, then you need to slow down again. So bearing in mind how much schema do I have will allow me to go faster or slower, and bearing in mind how much of the detail I need to take in as opposed to the big idea will allow me to go faster or slower. So over the weekend I was reading a book by Patrick Sukdeo about Islamism, and there were parts of it that were quite familiar, so I was able to skim them fairly quickly because they were dealing with principles and ideas and concepts that I've seen before. But there were parts of them where he was getting into quite a lot of detail about politics and organizations and how Islamic organizations have interfaced with other things. If I wanted to understand that detail, I would have had to slow right down. But since I wasn't interested in the particulars of the political wranglings of the Muslim Brotherhood, I basically could skim through that and just get the gist of it in terms of how they worked. So some practical ideas that can help you to read faster. So firstly, if we capitalize on peripheral vision, you don't need to read all the way to the end of a line. Your eye will pick up the last couple of words on each end of a page if you don't go all the way to the end. Secondly, what you need is something to track your eye. So some kind of a pointer that allows your eye not to lose its place as you are reading. 3, muscle memory. If you go double speed sometimes and then slow down, you'll find that your ability to skim material improves. And fourthly, purposeful pacing. How much do you already know? If a lot, you can read faster. If a little, you've got to read slower. And how much do you want to know? If you want to know just the big idea, you can skim faster. If you want to know all the details, you have to slow down.